Hey everybody, it's Wednesday, June 10th. Good to see all of you again, and this is your weekly encouragement from the Psalms. This week we're in Psalm 15, so let's take a look. O Lord, who shall sojourn in your tent? Who shall dwell on your holy hill? He who walks blamelessly and does what is right and speaks truth in his heart, who does not slander with his tongue, and does no evil to his neighbor, nor takes up a reproach against his friend, in whose eyes a vile person is despised, but who honors those who fear the Lord, who swears to his own hurt and does not change, who does not put out his money at interest, and does not take a bribe against the innocent. He who does these things shall never be moved. Last week we looked at Psalm 14, which dealt with the description of unbelievers. The fool says in his heart, Psalm 14 begins, that there is no God. Well, this week we're looking at, or the psalmist is looking at in Psalm 15, what the righteous person looks like. And it begins by asking in verse 1, what I'm going to call the most important question that has ever been asked in human history. The question is, who shall sojourn in the Lord's tent? And who shall dwell on God's holy hill? This is a question of intimacy. It's a matter of how can somebody sinful like you and me approach a God who is anything but sinful, a God that is holy and pure and upright. This is the question that generation after generation has asked and continues to ask. How can we, in our sinful condition, approach a God who is holy? The psalmist goes on to describe this person. Notice what this person looks like. Verse 2. He who walks blamelessly and does what is right and speaks truth in his heart. Again, Psalm 14, the fool, the man who despises God, who rejects God, says in his heart, there is no God, but rather the righteous person says in his heart that there is truth in this world, that pursues after that which is upright, that which is true, and that which is the complete opposite of falsehood. Those who speak truth in their hearts have a desire, a longing to understand the deeper things of life and the deeper things of God, who are driven constantly to cast off falsehood in life, falsehoods that people claim about other people, that are constantly pursuing after that which is true. This is what theology is. Knowledge of God, understanding of God, that which is true about God, because obviously there's a lot of falsehoods out there about God and about God's people. This is one of the marks of the righteous person. Verse 3, the righteous person does not slander with his tongue, does not do evil to his neighbor, and does not take up a reproach against his friend. There is purity, there is truth that permeates into our speech as well. One of the true tests of a wise person, a righteous person, is someone that knows how to guard their tongue. I think it's absolutely false today, the narrative that's being put out there and taught to us, that if you don't speak out against certain things on social media or wherever, you are complicit in them happening. This is not biblical wisdom. This is not the way it works according to the Bible. Fools speak without thinking and just blurt out things without any repercussions for what their words do. No, the Bible teaches us that the wise, the godly are slow oftentimes to speak, Don't speak, in other words, after they have prayed about things, have processed them, know how to bite their tongues, know how not to speak. Oftentimes is where true wisdom lies. Verse 4a, the righteous man is the one in whose eyes a vile person is despised, but who honors those who fear the Lord. It's talking about our affections, what we love and what we don't love. There is this sense of discernment that comes, that we as God's people love that which is right, that which is pure, that which is holy, that which leads to what is good and true and beautiful. And we also at the same time reject those things that are opposed to all of that. I remember in another country I was in a couple years ago, speaking with an older lady after church service who had told me of her great love of the show Game of Thrones. And I had never seen Game of Thrones, but from what I've read about it, it's quite appalling, a lot of the content that goes into this HBO show. And I, as best I could, expressed my concern over her watching this. And she sort of laughed at me and sort of said, well, you know, Sonny, I've seen just about everything in this life, and nothing really shocks me anymore. And you know how like your best thoughts come to you after conversations usually. I wish I had said to her at that time, it's not about shock value or not being shocked. It's about honoring God with that which we desire. Desiring that which is good and building us up, and not being detrimental to our spiritual lives. To go on, he talks about honors those who fear the Lord and swears to his own hurt and does not change. He's talking about integrity. Again, this is a missing word in our world today. Children aren't taught to at least most children aren't taught to have integrity anymore. That if you know, you say have someone over working on your house or gives you a bid on work around your house, and you accept that bid and only come to find out that a friend or a neighbor or an acquaintance can save you a bunch of money, but you've already agreed to go with this contractor. You know, you're to be, as Christians, men and women of our word. If you have agreed already to a contract, to a price, we should stick to that. That's integrity. Think about deeper things in life. You know, if we've promised to do certain things with our children or in our church, or agreed to serve on certain committees perhaps, we are to be men and women of integrity. We do what we say we're going to do. This is what Psalm 15 is describing as traits and characteristics of the righteous person. Finally, in verse 5, he says, the righteous man does not put out his money at interest and does not take a bribe against the innocent. Does not put out his money at interest. Again, in general terms, he's saying that the righteous man does not try to squeeze every single dime out of everybody that they come into contact with. Some of the most disreputable people I've ever known, Christians even, have been those that are so concerned about money, so obsessed with it, that they'll stop at nothing in order to get every last dime that they can possibly get. Now, the Bible is not telling us here that we should not be worried about money. It's not saying that money is not a good thing. It is. But money in its proper place is what the psalmist is saying here. We ought not to be greedy. We shouldn't see everything in terms of dollars and cents. Money should not be something that becomes an obsession to us. We must put money in its proper place. Notice taking a bribe against the innocent, again, seems to infer that we can't be bought. Again, integrity and money in its rightful place. We shouldn't be those people that will do anything for money. Not the case, I don't think, with the way the world works today. If you remember the Enron scandal a number of years ago, they were discovered to have been cooking the books, lying about how much they owed, and cleverly doing their accounting so that it looked better. Seedy business practices. This is the way the world oftentimes works and operates, and we're told as Christians we ought not to do that. So here's the final question then. Where's the grace in this Psalm 15? It kind of beats you up, doesn't it? Because I don't know anybody that can read verses 2 through 5 and can say with a clean conscience, no, I've acted in all these ways. I've wholeheartedly walked and sought after truth in my life, in my speech, in my affections, integrity. I'm perfectly content with what I have in life. The Bible has a way of doing this, of showing us our sin, but it doesn't do it just to beat you up. It does this to point you to the only person that is able to walk uprightly and blamelessly in verse 2. That's Jesus himself. Jesus was wholeheartedly invested in God's law. Jesus' speech reflected for 30 plus years his righteousness, his godliness. His affections were only ever pure all the time. He was a man of the utmost and truest integrity. Jesus was content with all that he had in this life. And so Psalm 15 is a psalm that points us to Jesus, the only righteous man, so that we might put our faith in Jesus Christ, trusting in him that he's the one that has fulfilled God's law perfectly. And by our faith, we are able to approach the tent of God, to dwell on God's holy hill in perfect righteousness. That's the only way that we may approach God's holy throne, is through the righteousness of Jesus. But there's one last thing to say about this. Those of us that are trusting in Jesus and his righteousness alone, little by little, more and more, we are to be concerned with all of these things just mentioned here. We ought to be striving to live lives that reflect this righteousness, becoming more like Jesus in our speech, in our contentment, in our hearts, in our affections, in our integrity, all of it. So Christian, be encouraged today that you absolutely can and you must approach God's holy hill and sojourn in his tent and live there. That it's only possible through the righteousness of Jesus Christ. And if you do, you will know in the end here of verse 5, he who does these things shall never be moved. Look at Hebrews chapter 12, and it talks about this kingdom that we have been given, things that can never be shaken. Why can we never be shaken in this life or in the life to come? Because our righteousness is not our own. Our righteousness is the righteousness of Jesus Christ and nothing else. This is where our faith must be. This is where we continue to trust. And this is what holds us steady through all the things in this life that seek to shake us and rattle our confidence in the God that we serve. So continue to put your trust in Jesus Christ. Know that because of your faith in him and who your faith is in, that you can never be shaken. Be well and be kind and go and be righteous as well. And we'll talk to you again here soon. Take care.